Hello, my name is Ava Monet and today I will discuss how the Supreme Court case Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, or better known as the FEC, changed campaign finance in the United States as we know it. I'm going to explain the background of the case, and then I'll go into the constitutional arguments that surround the case, and finally I'm going to talk about how the ruling still affects the elections and democracy we have in America today. So what was Citizens United versus FEC? So it was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2010. It concerned political spending by corporations and unions. It focused on a political film that criticized Hillary Clinton during the 2008 election. The Federal Election Commission blocked the film under campaign finance laws that stood at the time, and Citizens United argued that this violated free speech rights. So before this case, corporations and unions faced heavy restrictions on spending money directly for political advertisements close to elections. So Citizens United is a conservative nonprofit organization, and they wanted to air a documentary that criticized Hillary Clinton during the 2008 election. So the government blocked it under campaign finance laws, and that led to a Supreme Court case about whether political spending counts as protected free speech under the First Amendment within our Constitution. So the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in favor of Citizens United, majority opinion written by Justice Anthony Kennedy. Political spending equals protected free speech. The government cannot limit independent political expenditures by corporations or unions, and it did not allow direct donations to candidates. And I added a quote here from Justice Anthony Kennedy, and he says that the government may not suppress political speech on the basis of the speaker's corporate identity, and that just goes along with basically the decision that they ended up making. So the court ruled that the corporations and unions have First Amendment rights to spend money independently on whatever political messaging they choose to. So Justice Anthony Kennedy argued that the government cannot suppress political free speech based on the speaker's identity, like we just read in that quote there. However, the ruling still kept limits on direct contributions to candidates themselves. So this is why some people support the ruling. It protects freedom of speech under the First Amendment. The government should not control political expression. Corporations and unions represent groups of people, and more political advertising can increase political participation as a whole. So supporters of the ruling argue that freedom of speech should apply to everyone, and that includes organizations and corporations, not just people or individuals like you and me. They believe that the government should not decide who is allowed to participate in political discussions. Some also argue that more political messaging increases voter awareness and participation. And of course, by these people spending more money, we are getting more political messaging. So this is why critics oppose the ruling. So it increased influence of wealthy corporations and donors. There was a rise of super PACs. Ordinary citizens may have less political influence, and concerns about corruption and unequal political power arose. So there is a quote here from Justice John Paul Stevens, which was part of the dissenting opinion, and he said that democracy cannot function effectively when its constituent members believe it is being bought and sold. So critics argue that the decision gave too much power. Critics argued that the decision gave too much power to wealthy corporations and billionaires. So this is kind of proven because after the ruling, super PACs became extremely influential because they can spend basically unlimited amounts of money independently supporting candidates of their choice. Many people believe that this weakens democracy as a whole because wealthy interests can dominate political messaging over just ordinary people, because of course we don't have the same amount of money to go towards supporting candidates or pushing agendas and advertisements that we agree with. Sorry, my computer is lagging. There we go. Effects on modern campaigns. So there was a massive increase in outside political spending. Super PACs now heavily influence elections. Candidates rely more on wealthy donors and organizations, and political advertising has increased dramatically since the decision. So since the ruling, outside spending in elections has grown significantly, like we just said. Super PACs now spend millions or even up to the billions of dollars in supporting candidates and political causes of their choice. So political campaigns today rely heavily on expensive advertising and outside financial support when that wasn't really the case before. So, has Citizens United helped or hurt democracy? It protects constitutional free speech rights, but it also creates an imbalance in political influence. Wealthy groups can dominate political discussions, and democracy should balance free speech with political equality. So, in my opinion, the decision protected an important constitutional right, but it also created serious problems within our democracy in America. So while free speech is essential, unlimited political spending allows wealthy groups to have much more influence than average citizens like you and I. So this creates concerns about fairness and equal representation in elections. So, final thoughts. Citizens United permanently changed campaign finance. It expanded First Amendment protections for corporations and unions, increased outside spending in elections, and the debate over money and democracy continues today. So, in conclusion, the Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission remains one of the most controversial Supreme Court decisions in the modern-day American politics. The case expanded free speech protections, but it also changed the role of money in elections. This debate over whether the ruling strengthened or weakened democracy continues today, as we just said. And here is my page for my citations, and that is all. I hope you have a good day, and bye.